In recent years, Absolute's focus has been its flybridge and inverter ranges, but it has a good reputation when it comes to building sports cruisers. These were sports cruisers in the traditional sense, with swooping lines and rakish profiles, powered by twin or triple IPS pods for top speeds in the mid to late 30s. This 48 Coupe kicks off an all-new range of sports cruisers, catering for a market whose desires have changed considerably since Absolute was last building boats of this style. This all-new model is 48 feet 11 inches long and has a beam of 14 foot 10 inches. It weighs just over 21 tonnes and is propelled by a pair of Volvo Penta IPS 650s, twin 480 horsepower 6-cylinder 5.5 litre diesel engines. The starting price for this model is €770,000 excluding tax, but the prices tested for the boat that we sea trialled was 1.09 million excluding VAT.
So this boat is Absolute getting itself back into the sports cruiser game, because years ago they built lots of sports cruisers, sleek, sporty, quite high performing ones. This is a different kettle of fish. This is a boat that is looking at comfort and leisure space and time on board, maybe more of a focus on living space than performance anyway. But again, it falls into that usual Absolute rhythm of cruising along at 20-22 knots really comfortably, topping out at about 28. It's what you expect from pretty much the entire Absolute range these days. There's only one IPS engine option, and that's IPS 950, so that's 480 horsepower per side, and this ship performs perfectly nicely. You know, it's not topping out any faster than 28 knots, however it's decent acceleration wise, and as I said, when you get down to the 20-22 knots, which is where you're going to spend most of your time, it feels really comfortable, and you've got a range of about 250 miles at that speed. And I'm always talking about how good Absolute's helm positions are, and generally this is the same. However, there are a few little things, like the fact that you've got a small cup holder behind you, but there's no big cup holders here on the dash. And the ergonomics when you're seated aren't quite as good as they are on the larger Absolute boats I tested. I find the footrest is a bit too high, but the floor's a bit too low for you to rest your feet comfortably. Though this seat is adjustable, as is the steering wheel, and like Absolute do on most of their boats, there's enough space here that you can stand and drive, which is great on a boat of about 50 feet, and the fact, as usual, you've got a side door. So there's plenty of good stuff. There's a few smaller flies in the ointment that you don't tend to get on the larger boats. In terms of instrumentation, it's all digital, really nicely displayed. It's Raymarine on this boat. Again, you've got Absolute's digital boat management system, which puts all of the boat systems right under your fingertips. And of course, you've got your Volvo Penta screen as well. So again, there's a huge range of engine information that you can have through that screen. So we're ticking along at that cruising speed now, 3,200 RPM, 22 knots, 126 litres per hour combined, the engines. But what's nice is that these 6-cylinder Volvos have got a good amount of mid-range punch. So if I floor the throttles now, you do get a nice reaction from the boat, and we're quickly up to 25 knots. And it doesn't get too raucous either. Sound levels are pretty well controlled. We've actually got the back door open, so that makes it a little bit noisier than it would be. But now we're getting up towards top speed, 28 knots and 3,800 RPM. So you can get a bit of a move on and it feels perfectly comfortable. And actually, you know, it's IPS, so you sort of know that the handling isn't going to be that tenacious. It's no stern drive sports cruiser, but it's fine, and it's a really nice, easy boat to steer. The steering is so light and predictable, and also not so light that it wanders around when you're going through a bit of a chop. I mean, it's not that choppy here today, but you know, it sits nice and solid on the straight line. You don't have to constantly be adjusting the wheel. It's not a particularly exciting boat to drive when it comes to steering, but it's perfectly nice. Now this boat has got a lot of systems fitted to help you with coming into berth. The first thing it's got is Volvo's assisted docking. Now that looks like normal IPS joystick and functionality where you have the DPS where you hit the button and the boat holds you in that position. But this also uses a side power proportional bow thruster. So you also have control of the bow via the bow thruster, giving you much closer control. And the key thing about that is, on a normal IPS boat, when you go hard one side on the joystick, the stern sometimes is ahead of the bow, so you come across at an angle. On this, when you go dead sideways, because you've got the bow thruster linked into the system, you go absolutely dead straight. The boat stays straight, you just move perfectly sideways. And the other nice thing about this system over a standard DPS system is that when you let go of the joystick, it immediately holds the boat in that position. So if you just need a second, a breathing space, the bow thruster and the IPS pods will just hold the boat in that position. So look, I'm by the dock and you can just hold still, take a breath and recompose yourself. Now the other thing is Raymarine Doc Sense. And the way to think about that is it's like a radar guided parking system on your car, and it also uses cameras. So you can see the 3 cameras. There's a camera on each side. When you activate the system, a little flap comes up so that the lenses are clear and they can see what you're doing. And then you also have this radar, and those cameras then build a picture on this radar here. So you can see your proximity to the dock side. And then as you get closer, a bit like the system in your car, you'll get beeping, and you'll get also a signal. So when you're relatively close, it goes yellow, and then when you get very close, it goes red. And those two things combined, there you go, it's going yellow now because we're getting close to the dock, and it's beeping. And then as you get closer, the beeps get louder and more frequent, and it goes red. It just really, both these combined, individually they're very clever, but both of them combined take a lot of the stress and strain out of berthing, especially this assisted docking, because the fact for me that you can just let go of the joystick and take a moment and not panic about the boat moving is really, really valuable, especially to new boaters. Now, as with its new line of flybridge boats, the idea on this coupe here is to really open up the cockpit and do away with a solid transom so that you have this sort of terrace over the water vibe, and it works really, really effectively. You've got a hydraulic bathing platform, so this obviously drops down into the water. This is also where you'd store your tender. You've got a run of storage under here. These are all connected, you know, it's separate doors, but it's one big void under there, great for putting fenders, kit, whatever you want, shove it in there. But the point is that you're very open to the water, and if kids are in the water, guests are swimming, you're sitting here relaxing in the cockpit, you've got a really great view. You haven't got a solid transom blocking your view out over the water. And as with the flybridge boat, the 60, this is all completely modular. It's spec'd as standard as sort of open deck, so you can either add this furniture that Absolute will supply, and you can arrange that in any way you want. These are all single pods, so you can move them however you wish, or you can have the furniture from a particular furniture designer that you like, and that makes this area really flexible. And it's the main outdoor living space. Now, if you're in a busy quay like we are now in a marina, you might want to go up to the front where there's a sun pad and you can perch up there away from prying eyes. But this is a really nice living space, and out on the water it also works really, really nicely. A little bit more about this seating. It's actually a company that designs furniture for villas, but Absolute asked them to create the furniture for boats. And what's really nice is, as well as being able to move them, you can actually take the arms out as well, so you can join them together. You can make them into armchairs, you can turn them into completely, you know, flat seats that you can lie on them. And because it's not a fixed bench like you get on lots of boats at this size, they're really, really comfortable. Nice plump cushions, you can get yourself tucked in the corner. They work brilliantly. They're only held down by sort of their own weight, and then they've got rubber feet for friction on the deck. But they didn't move around the sea at all, and it's a really, really effective layout. Another thing is, it connects really nicely with the galley. Completely flat floor here, so you know this becomes one big living area. And this galley is positioned in a space where it can serve the internal area really easily, but of course it's open to this cockpit as well. The galley is also really well kitted out. You haven't got sort of full height fridge freezer in here because they didn't want it to sort of impose on you when you walk in, so your cool storage is set within the galley itself, but it's all really nicely finished, and again, it's done properly. You know, there aren't really sharp angles here. You've got a proper handhold here. Everything feels really solid and really substantial. And another key feature about the 48 Coupe is that you don't get a sunroof as an option on this boat. What you have instead is a solar panel. And this solar panel, when you're at sea, should produce enough power so that you can run all of the boat's domestic stuff just off that. You don't have to run a generator, you don't have to run the engines, you can't run the air conditioning, but to counter that, they've got a side door here, and they've got windows on both sides that come halfway down. The idea being that you just fill the boat with natural ventilation, so you can sit here in silence with the solar panels charging the stuff that you want to use, stereo, fridges, that sort of thing. And this is quite a simple layout here in the saloon, but again, it works really effectively. And the other nice thing is you've got a great view out from here. Slightly raised up here in this central seating area. The table obviously folds out, so it goes to double its size. So down here, the lower deck, obviously you have the sleeping accommodation, and there's some stuff on here that absolutely do really well. The fact that they use these pocket doors works really nicely, means that you haven't got the doors gobbling up very valuable walking and moving space, so that just slides away into the bulkhead here. You've got a normal door here on the day heads, and you've got a pocket door here to the master cabin. Two guest cabins, you've got a twin on this side, you've got a double cabin here, and they share this bathroom here. Neither of them are en suite, but they share what is a good sized day heads. And that means the master cabin here, which I'll have a proper look at, is a really good size. And it uses this slightly irregular format where you've got the bed offset, but that means that they can push the space right forward in the bow. It's got quite a broad beam a long way forward, this boat, and you've got these massive hull windows on both sides, and it means when you're lying in bed you have got a view out over the water, which is really nice. And this has got an ensuite, and that is a really good size as well. Plenty of headroom all throughout, including the bathroom, well over 6'1", separate shower cubicle. It's really nicely executed. But I think we should have a look at the second guest cabin, because that's got a little surprise in store. So with your master cabin up forward, amidships here you have your VIP cabin, and considering it goes underneath the saloon, it's amazingly spacious. Here in the lobby especially, well over 6'2" of headroom. It drops down here. There's a few level changes, but they all mean that you can stand up straight wherever you are in the cabin. You know, really good double bed. You've got a big hull window here. They've managed to fit a little bureau here as well. But what I really like is that you've actually got a mini walk-in wardrobe, which is a pretty luxurious touch on a boat of this size, especially in a guest cabin. To access the engine, you have to slide the seats away, and then you've got this big hatch here in the cockpit. You come down this ladder and you're straight in between both motors, and access to all sides of them and both of the IPS pods is actually really good. It's crouching room only once you're into the engine room itself, but everything is really neatly organised, nicely laid out. It's a super clean installation.
Thank you for watching our review of the Absolute 48 Coupe. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new video.